And we are live.
All righty. Welcome. This is the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee on February, what is today? 19, 2025, 1 p.m. We are here to talk about H125 and testimony from the Department of Public Service. First, we will go around the room and introduce ourselves, as we are wont to do. I'm Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, Calgary, this district.
Richard Bailey, Lamol 2. Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia, too.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Graham Kleppner, Pittman 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 3.
Jack Locker, committee assistant.
Thank you, everyone. What are you director? What are you director for?
Yes, I am Director of Regulated Utility Planning, for the record, TJ Ford, Public Service Department.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Ford. So yes, we would like to hear your thoughts on this H125, which endeavors to put together reporting that will help us understand the impact of the energy transition that is taking place across the world and even in Vermont, how that will impact Vermonters. So your thoughts?
Great, thanks. And I don't have any slides for today. From my last sessions here, you probably sick of me slides anyway. But I did want to speak a little bit to H125 and really thank you for articulating the at least the high level goal. And I think we understand that goal is providing information that would support the energy policy discussions and decisions in the state that need to happen to get us where we want to go. And we definitely support kind of having having the right information available to make decisions. We're really fully committed to ensuring that it's not only us that has it or the relevant state agency, but all policymakers have that information available. Specific, I know there's been discussions since the bill has been introduced, and so I don't want to necessarily, I'm going to try and blend like what's in the actual written bill with what I've would have heard and what you've heard already today. I do think, a lot of the information that you requested and what's written in the bill or what is in that bill is already, a lot of it's already collected, published and provided to relevant committees of jurisdiction, but probably not in one place. So having it summarized or put in one place where it's already available, that is not a huge lift. It's where there is, where it's new information to collect, or but that could be, depending on what the information is, that could be a little more, or we do want to really understand what the goal of pulling together the specific data that was requested. And as I understand it, maybe what's in the bill may not be what ultimately moves forward, but really in order to evaluate the effectiveness and usefulness of each specific data point, we need to better understand what you want to do with the data, because we do have a bunch of it for you. All that to be said, I know that Secretary Moore yesterday suggested that we think about the types of data that would be useful to reach the goals, and that seems like a really good next step in the process for having, really figuring out what would be most useful to you going forward and how that could be best reported and articulated and condensed into, one area. I will note that ideally this would be within another report that we already have. We already have 1 million reports. To have another one, I don't know if how useful that is, or maybe it's I'll suggest the annual energy report. Ultimately, it provides a ton of really good information. It may provide too much information, honestly. It's like 115 slides. It was sent to your committee on the 15th when it was due, but it some of that information I presented to you all, and then there's a whole bunch more information in there as well. And some of it is what was asked for in the original 8125. So, that thinking about that process, we've committed to working with Secretary Moore and her team to move that forward. And I think she have to come back next week with a proposal going forward. Just a couple other comments. I do just want to also mention a couple of other things that we do and report on, just to remind you or for your awareness. We do publish the Clean Energy Industry Report annually, that describes the clean energy industry in Vermont. And currently that's done through the Clean Energy Development Fund. And it's been done consistently for the past at least 7 or 8 years, perhaps longer.
That's right on your website.
It is right on our website. Yep. And that, the biggest takeaway that I take from that is that we continue to lead the nation in clean energy jobs per capita. And we have for some time now. So that's renewable energy, energy efficiency, storage, anything that is related to the clean energy transition, and per capita, we're leading the nation. We also, relative to what's asked for, we track costs, electric rates. We report statewide. I showed you those charts statewide. That's really an EIA chart for that statewide look. But we also have, standard residential rates by utility are available. That hasn't necessarily been reported. I just say residential rates because commercial rates, there are a lot of different flavors of that, and reporting that may not have meaning, except to like a very specific situation. And so, I think there could be dozens of rates within a utility, and it's kind of hard to decipher that unless there was a specific question. But residential rates, there's usually one standard rate and then maybe a couple of other use case specific rates that are relevant to the conversation, and we do have all of that.
Can I interrupt 1 second? So on the commercial rates, how would we get a handle on the trends or the trajectory of commercial rates?
Right. So we do have all of the revenues and kilowatt hours are tracked by sector. And so we have residential, commercial, and industrial sector, and we can aggregate those into rates. And so that's not only the variable rate, the per kilowatt hour charge, but also the fixed charge as well, the customer charge. And so you count all the revenues divided by the kilowatt hours, you could get an average commercial rate.
Would include demand charges.
It would include demand charges as well. So as you know, there's commercial customers that have demand charges and those that do not, and those have different, those would be different rates. We could aggregate all of that into a commercial sector pretty easily and have that, but just having those separated, that then becomes a bigger lift to.
Would you have information? Would you have information that's granular? Granular enough to know EV charging network revenues and kilowatt hours?
I think we could get that. The data that we have right now, I don't know that we have that specifically called out as a rate class. I would have to check if. So the way that it's reported to us in our annual request to the utilities, and they report everything, they aggregate it. It's residential, commercial, and industrial sales. And so within that, there's all these different categories. Transportation is an emerging new kind of rate class itself, right? Of those other three. And I would need to check to see if it's been reported to us in the past that way.
Well, it might be by customer, actually. Not that we would want to know by customer, but if you can aggregate all of it, charge points and EV goes and whatever all the different networks into a total revenue, total kilowatt hours, that might be right to know.
Yeah, no, so I guess my distinction is as I'm not sure right now if those are just reported under the commercial sector, in aggregate, or if it's kind of its own rate class.
Yeah.
So in the future, that's something we could have parsed out separately if it's not already.
Go back. Sure. Quick question. Clean energy reports. The last one I see on your website is 2022. Is that happening annually?
It is there. So I will admit to our website not being super user friendly. I'm sure there is another spot on our website where the more updated one is. I just figured I actually just pulled it last night, so I know it's on there.
Just not under Vermont Clean Energy Reports. No,
Oh.
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm making a note. I can send a link to the committee after this as well.
All right, and our committee chair is back in the saddle. So,
Well, I hate to jump in midway. Where are we?
well, TJ's.
I don't mean, I'm sorry. Did anybody have any questions? I'll just move along.
Okay. So I really just have two more things here. We also do a fuel price report, which is probably of interest. So we every week, and we're supported by the EIA on this, do call around to a sample of fuel providers and publish on our website what the average fuel price is for heating fuels. So we do that every week in the winter and every month in the summer. So that is available, and friends can be grabbed from there or articulated through that. We also, as part of the annual energy report, kind of combine that into an annual look year over year of what prices on a dollar per MMBTU basis look like, and compare those so you can see for like unit of energy provided what natural gas costs versus fuel oil versus kerosene versus a heat pump versus electric resistance heat, etc. And so we do include that in our annual energy report as well.
Does that also take into account some discount for efficiency losses or?
Yeah, so it's for heat delivery.
Heat delivery.
Yes. Yep. So you'll see a heat pump is compared to electric resistant heat, for example. That's a big difference.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yes. And then just because it was related to the bill, I will note we do report on workforce development efforts that are ongoing, that are related to the energy industry. Not necessarily to we haven't reported in the annual energy report as to effectively their success or kind of, the great detail specifics, but the report does provide information to say, hey, this is what's out there. And there's, I counted up nine different efforts that we reported on in the annual energy report, from federal funding efforts to partnerships with the VTC, Vermont Technical College, to funding through Efficiency Vermont and efforts that they're doing. And so there are, there's like a summary of kind of what's out there. And I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that, because workforce development was mentioned in the bill. With that, I'll just reiterate, I think, reading a semi-transcript of Secretary Moore's discussion with you all yesterday, I just want to reiterate that I think we're in agreement with what she was saying in terms of looking ahead and trying to determine what the best indicators would be to provide the most value. It wasn't, when I looked at the bill, it wasn't readily apparent that some of the things in the bill would provide any value, and some of them would, I think, be an additional lift. And then that creates, those are resources and dollars that we need. Other ones we're already reporting and just putting them in a different place not a big deal, right? And or elevating them some other way is not a big deal. And so I just wanted to kind of express support for that path of really like taking the time to figure out kind of the best path forward and what is most valuable to you all.
Rep. Sibylla?
Yeah, so I don't know, what I am hoping, do you now, I know you us a lot really well to the boards. Do you now have the ability to tell us which towns are at risk of falling behind in terms of access to heating fuels or transportation fuels, or combined with higher electricity rates, residential rates than other places, combined with not a lot of EV chargers, or no three-phase power. What were some other things we were talking about yesterday? So for me, what I am looking for is understanding where people are potentially at risk. So we've got a transition that's happening, and it's not happening for all Vermonters at the same rate. And I think about, and I've referenced this, you may have heard me reference it, with the telephones and broadband, and having a situation happen where all of a sudden we have places in rural Vermont that have no cell, no broadband, except for the copper lines. And now the copper lines can't get repaired for 10 days. And so we don't want to hit that situation again. Like, oh, all of a sudden there's no gas station for 60 miles, or there's only one, Fred's is the only place that's delivering in the entire state of Vermont. And, they are suffering from the workforce challenge. And, you may not be able to get an emergency delivery for 3 days. So is that something that, because we don't need to do things just to do things. So, is that something that I am sure that we all would like to make sure that we don't miss those signs? That's what my was in asking for this. And yeah,
That's really helpful summary. So you listed off a number of things. I think we have some of the information. I don't think we have all of it. For instance, I don't know that we have the information on fuel providers' service territory, right? And I'm not aware of an issue in that regard now, but that doesn't mean there won't be one going forward. And part of that is with fuel providers are not regulated by service territory like an electric utility would be. We know exactly where their boundaries are. And a fuel dealer may decide to expand or contract and has no obligation to tell anybody about it, right? They're just either available or no longer providing service in that area. And that brings up the question of do they need to, how, I suppose it brings up the question of how they should be regulated in that respect, right? Because if they're in a competitive marketplace where they're, the idea of the competitive marketplace, I think, is that, well, if fuel provider A doesn't provide service there, fuel provider B will see the opportunity and come in and provide that service. And we don't manage that with the idea that the market will manage it to be the most efficient it can be. During the transition, is there need to manage that or at least report on it? I think that's a good question that I think agencies may want to think about and come back to as we go forward in the next steps in this process.
Yeah, and so we had I can't remember who asked us, but I think an outcome of getting this report might be, oh, there is a problem for which we don't have a solution, but we need to now think about this administration and legislature, like, oh, there's an anomaly here in this community where that is especially vulnerable, or these communities or this region, or I think about there are reports like the energy burden.
Right.
We've seen some others that have some data that it's really around geography. Just making sure that we are aware if there are specific communities and regions that are getting that have more pressure during this transition than others. I mean, and I bet you if we said, TJ, could you come up with a list of the 10 top towns based on all of the data that you have and information that you have? I bet you probably could, not sitting right there today, but you could probably list some towns that are probably really challenged and feeling this.
Right. I think the energy burden report is a really good tool. We've actually talked about whether that should be a state effort as opposed to just internally, but as opposed to and done more regularly. But that provides really good information. We have where generation projects are being cited, and we can map to. It's not perfect because utility territories aren't perfect with town boundaries, but we can map in a lot of towns the electric rates. I think then it's average fuel rates, but then with some understanding of how far people are driving or how much heating they're using, the size of homes in areas. I think there's little pieces of that are available. And portions of that were aggregated in the energy burden report, which is a good tool. We do have things like AOT does, and we put it in our annual energy report, actually kind of the map of the EV charging infrastructure. Right. And so there are pieces of that. And then, that map in particular, you can see where there's holes in public charging infrastructure, just quickly by glancing at the map.
Troy, speaking of the map, this discussion's making me think about some of the maps that we have in the environment space, with many data layers.
Exactly.
I mean, do we not have an energy equivalent that shows an overlay of burden, an overlay of charging, an overlay, because we've been looking at a lot of maps, but they seem to exist in isolation from each other. And then we have a hard time saying, what's the variable there? Is it income? Is it, if we could see those things stacked up, I just feel like, that would be an appropriation and an effort. But I'm wondering if that's where this is really leading is to a really interactive, robust map like we have on the environment side for a lot of our work.
In my mind, I keep seeing it as a map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TJ, have you heard of any Vermont customers for delivered fuel who have been unable to find a distributor willing to deliver to their location?
I have not.
Just common experience of people I have asked that question. So we haven't gone over the edge of the cliff yet, apparently.
Are you saying, excuse me, are you saying there are, you've not found people who can't find a fuel to deliver?
That is correct. We have not heard of anyone.
Anybody who can't find somebody to deliver to them.
I am anxious about it, but people with experience in the industry have assured me that truck drivers are willing to drive a long way to a customer, and that it is unlikely that people will be stranded. And that seems to be consistent with everything we've heard.
Except if the delivery point person fails to maintain a roadway to his home. Is there? And I only know of one. Oh, I don't know of any more.
Sorry, to follow up on that. It may not be a matter of a customer not having access to any fuel delivery, but it might be that, yes, you can get on our list, but we won't be there for 2 weeks. Something like that. It requires people to anticipate well ahead when they're going to need oil. That might be a more common situation than maybe something that think about in your consumer assistance division to flag. But the other question I wanted to ask is, we heard from EAN, Jared Duvall, that while you do surveys of other heating fuel prices, you don't do that. You stop doing that for wood, cordwood, and pellets. Is that correct? And if so, why?
Yeah, so we never collected this on a regular basis. We have reported it annually in the annual energy report based on kind of a point in time collection of some data. And the data that's out there, which is not a lot, honestly. And there's kind of only a smaller number of suppliers and vendors that are willing to respond when we go out and ask. And so Forest Parks and Recs for a while was collecting data on cordwood and pellets and sending it to us. And ultimately, the person there that was responsible, there was staff turnover, and then they changed the makeup of the position and they stopped collecting that data. Part of it was, I think, because it was challenging to collect and that it wasn't, I think it was hard to be sure that it was reliable. And so with that, it kind of seemed like a task that wasn't providing a lot of value, is my understanding. In theory, you could go back and start doing that, add that to the price calls that we do every week to different fuel providers. That would be in addition to what we do now. But but a different issue with wood is, the fuel price providers, you're filling, it's not perfect information, it's point in time, but at least, you're filling up your tank 3, 4, or 5 times a winter. And so it kind of happens usually, or a lot of times with cordwood, especially, you're just buying that once in the summer and then you're done for the year. Or maybe you have to, if you're like me last year, you have to actually purchase some more in April. But I think we got it covered this year, though. Learn from my mistake. But so it's kind of like, and that happens for pellets as well. They're kind of, a lot. Those people buy pellets regularly through the winter, but a lot of people buy it a couple times in the summer and have them in storage and pull them out as they need over the winter. And so the last thing I'll note on that is that as we understand it, there's only even one other state in the region that does that, and that's New York, that actually collects on a regular basis like we do for other fuels. And it was reported to me this morning that New York was going to stop doing that and kind of just do this annual kind of check like we report in the annual energy report now. And I can't tell you why New York is stopping or the other states, and I can just speculate that it's for the same challenges that we run into.
Well, I can imagine that not being useful to do, certainly on a weekly basis, but perhaps quarterly, something like that. I think, or even monthly. Something might be useful just so people have an idea of, and have that on your also on your sort of heating price chart that you show, so you got an idea that wood is much less expensive than everything else, or not that much less expensive than a heat pump, or more than whatever. Just for comparison.
Yeah, subject to check. It was in the past. I think it's still on there in this year that cordwood and pellets are on that chart per BTU basis.
Yeah, based on a one-year survey.
Right.
Yeah. So
Representative Southworth?
Thank you. I guess I would just question the accuracy of cordwood because of the variations of people who sell it, right, from farmers to neighbors selling to neighbors.
Yeah.
Wood pellets, the same thing. You get them at hardware stores, grocery stores.
Right.
So I would really caution that. I don't think that would be much of an accurate estimate of what's actually being sold and used in the state.
Well, we give people a yardstick so they can look on the website if they wanted to and see, well, PSD is saying the average cost of a cord of wood is $300, but the Joe down the street is asking for 350 or 400 or something, and whatever. Yeah. Just a reference point.
Yeah, and just.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree with you. I hear your point, and I agree.
And not to mention all the people who cut, split their own.
Yeah.
I wrote down something. Oh, on the all the maps overlaying together. I thought that was a really interesting point, and I want to better understand what you're hoping to see. If it's just you want to overlay energy burden with one thing at a time, or if it's everything possible at once. I worry about kind of getting this really and putting the resources into this really cool tool that actually isn't providing useful, actionable information.
You go.
So presumably the energy burden report, it's not officially, is picking up the difference in residential rates.
Yeah, I think
Because I know there's a pretty significant difference in residential rates amongst the utilities.
yes.
Do you think that is captured, or is it captured anecdotally? Because that data is reported, it's self-reporting from Vermonters about their bills, right?
Well, it's been a while since I looked at the methodology. I think they include electric rates from utilities and do the best they can to map it to towns. So, well, I was trying to think of an example of a town that is split utility territory, coming up with one, but, Ludlow. So Ludlow is served mostly by Ludlow Electric. Are there other, maybe Greenbound Power serves some of Ludlow?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, yeah, their territorial boundaries are many towns, Proctor's.
Right. Yeah, that's a good example too. And so, I think I'm not sure exactly how they kind of average out what that burden is in the town, but I believe that the energy burden report looks at the rates, the actual rates that for the utilities that serve the town. I know that it's true for towns that are served by natural gas, because those rates you see Chittenden County and surrounding areas, the northwest of Vermont, that are served by natural gas have a much lower thermal energy burden, because natural gas BTU basis is a much lower price than other delivered fuels, and so you can really see that in the map. So I'm pretty sure they do, as far as energy rates go, they do it by utility, regulated utility. I know the first version of the energy burden report kind of overlaid and looked at where solar was being cited, and you could see very clearly energy burden was high, had a high correlation up to where solar, I'm saying that backwards, where energy burden was already low, that's solar, like small solar was in those towns. So you'd see like Shelburne and Charlotte and had a lot of solar sited there. And that was an indication of who was taking advantage and small scale solar, I'm not talking utility projects, but who was taking advantage of the net metering program. And so that was really interesting data there that I think was useful in the conversation that we've had over the last, since that first burden report that came out in 2019. And so.
Yeah. So with net metering, right? So if you have an area that's got high concentration of net metering, the people who are not net metering are going to have a much higher energy burden, right? Because
Correct.
they're the ones that are left. And
by utility, yes. So.
Yeah. So which map shows us where those people are?
Well, that same map, I think, showed that, places with high energy burden were not seeing the net metering located in their territory. So their bills were higher paying for those net metering customers in the towns that already had low energy credit. So basically people with high income were able to either had the wherewithal or were able to otherwise net meter to further lower their electric bill. And then people who already had high energy burden for whatever reason, I won't get into that now, but were not seeing net metering, not participating in net metering, so that they were the ones paying for those customers in those kind of low energy burden, high income areas to have net metering. So that's I said all that without saying the words cost shift, but it was the cost shift that we always talk about.
Do you see it at the community level?
At the community.
I'm really wishing that I had the energy burden report in front of me and could look at the map, but
Do we see the
shifts. I mean, it's not like one community is shifting to another community, or is that how you see it? Is that how we see the data?
That's kind of what the data looks like, right? You can say it's not so granular to say X community is supporting Y community, but you can say solar net metering penetration is the highest in the communities that have lowest.
This is a good example though, actually. So if we think about a really wealthy town, I live in one, for instance. I don't know what our levels of net metering are, but that town, let's say it had a high net metering rate. The people who don't, so that may show a low energy burden for the town, but there may be people in that town, like, do you have that level of data? So those people might be getting really fresh.
Right, so there could be discrepancies within towns that I don't believe the energy burden report kind of goes that level. Like one half of the town could be getting crushed and the other half could be really benefiting, so.
I guess by community levels, if you're looking at a bunch of factors, that's one that.
If the first burden report came out in 2019 and net metering's been around since 2005, maybe 2009, do we not have a good basis to start with? If there are already net metering out there before you started collecting your data, I don't know where you get your data from, the report that the utilities get of
I mean,
people that are connected to the grid.
Right, yeah, so we know where all the net metering is. I mean, I can't, and I don't want to be able to know, if 3 out of 5 of you have net metering and where you live exactly, right? We don't have that data, but the utilities have that data, and we have that's imported. We have like the list of all the locations of where net metering is, and then later on the energy burden report show the income in each of those communities and the energy burden in each community, and we can map that onto each other. And so we do have that data. I don't necessarily want to turn this into a net metering conversation. I think it's one example of ways you could use the data, but I think the point is that may be an example of the type of information you're looking for. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just one other point of information. We do have, and I showed that chart with generation constraints. You may recall there was 2 of them. Yeah, there was the Velco one that said we had this much headroom in different areas of the state, and then there was the one that showed Green Mountain Power's distribution lines in like kind of red, yellow, and green. And so that Vermont Electric Co-op has that kind of chart as well. And what we have been pushing in utility integrated resource plans, we've been pushing them to get more granular in their data, knowing exactly where and on which circuit distributed energy resources to include electric vehicles and heat pumps and other like end use loads, electrified loads, where those are located on their system so they can better manage it so that there's not one circuit in their territory. Maybe it's a high income circuit and everybody's switching to electric vehicles and to heat pumps. And then an upgrade is necessary because of that. And we're pushing them to plan more and more. A lot of the state is already, I think Green Mountain Power does a pretty good job of that. Vermont Electric does a good job. And the smaller utilities are putting the tools in place to do that. And we are pushing them to continue to do that. A couple of years ago, the legislature, you all appropriated some money for advanced metering infrastructure to get utilities up, to understand, level up and to better be able to understand where those things are on their system. So that type of thing is not available statewide, but I wanted to just articulate that I think that is coming. It's something we're pushing for, and another piece of the puzzle of really understanding where everything is located. I don't think we would be able to do that for, a report this December, but it is coming and progress towards that. I think we could make progress towards that report on this.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, we're hearing about the importance of time and location for value to the grid. And this idea, I think, is really about access to the energy transition and the just transition. And it seems like if you could have this kind of insight, it would really inform where you could deploy strategic incentives, where you see a lot of factors really working against a particular geography. So it seems, I'm sure this kind of decision making is happening with all the various things, but I think the dream is that it could be more visible, to be able to bring that kind of attention to how are we distributing access to electrification benefits.
So now I would just add on that we are not distributing all of those benefits. The market is distributing some of those benefits. So,
well, sometimes we are using public money. Obviously,
sometimes we are. Sometimes we are not. Sometimes they're just happening as a result, as a function of markets. So, or not happening as a result of the markets.
Rep Campbell?
Yes, that's a good example of what you're talking about, Victoria, that Jay, this would be useful. It would be, so we have a constriction in sorry, we have a constriction in our generation in the Shiite area. And it would, one way of dealing with that would be to strategically increase the load there. And one way of doing that perhaps might be to pair weatherization program delivery services with heat pump incentives to help folks who are in that area first get their house weatherized if we handle a heat pump, or heat pump can handle the load, and then provide incentives for people to get heat pumps so that would begin to take some of the load and excess of generation that's available in that area. But it would be good to know, for example, under other constrictions like old power lines that old distribution lines that won't support it or would have to be upgraded, or transformers or what have you. So that seems like an example of the kind of things we can learn if we had that information.
So like tier 3
Yeah.
would be very targeted.
Yeah.
It'd be very strategic
Right.
deployment for
Right.
tier 3
Right.
infrastructure.
Yeah. So if we knew that information, we could put all those things together and try to target services to those folks. And most of those in that area will also be relatively low in costs. Right.
Rep Powell?
So the Department of Public Services goes with the regulated utilities, and what you do in the fuel market is that something that's mandated through other requirements that you?
Yeah, we don't regulate fuel providers at all at the Department of Public Service. What we do for part of our reporting requirements is we do look at kind of the industry as a whole. We have a requirement for the energy plan. And so we start to look at the thermal
And that's
sector.
why you
And so
look at
that's-
the non-regulated businesses of fuel
Right.
providers. be
Yeah.
it Propane, fuel oil, and the amount of gas is regulated. That's enough.
Right, yes, they are. So yeah, that's the broad comprehensive energy planning role that we play, draws in the thermal sector in that way. And well, as we all know, those sectors are kind of coming
Meshing
together
together.
with the potential for electrification. So, yep.
Is the mapping, is that part of the computer department, I guess they call it
Yes.
GIS system? Who does many of the agencies duplicate their GIS data and kind of keep it to themselves, or is there?
I mean, that's a good question. There is some sharing through the John Adams's group. I can't
What's it called?
Vermont Center for
Geographic Information.
Yes, thank you. And so there is coordination through there and through our agency of digital services and kind of managing that. That said, so the way we've reported, for instance, the electric vehicle infrastructure in the state, we ask AOT they give it to us and we put it in the annual energy report, as opposed to having it be a layer on our own GIS system. And so, could there be better integration there? Probably. But there is that capability.
Yes, Representative South.
Thank you. Based on what you've heard of the asks and what's in the bill, do you have a thought of whether there'd be an increase in costs to the department in order to compile this information to disseminate it to us?
Well, I feel like what I've heard is different than what's in the bill, first of all. But I think it depends on how we go forward. So I think that part of what Secretary Moore was talking about yesterday is coming back with an idea of what the next steps could look like, how we could drive to more clear information for all policymakers. I think that would probably come with some cost, whether it's doing a report, an independent new report, or better organizing the data that we already collect. The range of costs could be, depending on what we ultimately decide to do, the range of costs could be very little to something that is significant. And so it's a hard question to answer right now, but the short answer is yes, that there are costs of doing something new. The range, could replace some work, or it could coordinate some, so it could be a small cost, it could be big.
So would it make sense to say that until we know the exact trajectory of what's asked, we can't really put any price tag on that at this point in time?
Yeah, I would struggle to do that today for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That gets to my question. So you went right there. We had talked a little bit yesterday about whether there was a phased approach, like what could you do now for easy, is there anything that could happen now that's easy, that we could build on next year, or, so we start now and we get something very imperfect in the fall that we know is imperfect, but we've got something to build on. And in the meanwhile, you guys are simultaneously working on some thoughts about what the leading indicators might be and how we could make it better. And I guess that's my question.
What do I think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're willing and able to work with A&R and the other agencies to think about what we can best present next week. I think Secretary Moore committed to maybe sometime next week coming back with something, and then in the future. And I think there's potential there. I am always looking for better ways to communicate good information so that we can all be on the same page to, then argue, or maybe not argue, but hopefully not argue, but talk about the best policy going forward. And I know Commissioner Johnson, since it's only been 6 weeks that he's been at the department, but has ingrained in us already that we need to do better on how we collect and manage data, and use new tools in place, new mechanisms to actually really improve the way we look at data and help our utilities manage the grid. And so to the extent that we can work with other agencies to come up with a path forward to improve on what we're doing, the information we're providing to you all and to everybody else, even internally, I think that is, there's some potential there. And I think we'll put our heads together, see what we can come up with in the very short term, like next week, and then short term as in the fall, and then it will be ongoing.
Would you want to, maybe somebody can help me with my memory. Did Secretary Moore said she'd come back, or did she say she'd send along some thoughts in writing? And what would you like to do?
I would like to partner with Secretary Moore and the other agencies so that we're providing kind of one cohesive message to you. I think that to the extent that we agree and that there is one message.
On the next week timeframe though.
I think that.
So on
I
the
think
broader
that's-
thing,
yes,
yeah.
On both, really,
Yeah,
but on the
okay.
next week timeframe also. So however, whatever shape that takes, whatever we provide, I would assume you would either going to have questions on.
Yeah. I could email you and Secretary Moore and just say, hey, based on all the conversations we've had, could you send along by, next Wednesday or something, just any thoughts on what could be a now thing? What could be a now project, and then how you might shape phase 2? Does that sound doable?
Yeah, I mean, by now project, you mean, what do you mean by now project?
Before
crossover. So if we're gonna,
Oh, okay.
if we're gonna
For
vote
a
bill out.
A bill, okay, thank you. I didn't know if you meant the actual doing of.
No, not the
Yeah.
actual doing.
like all that information next week.
Yeah, if we're gonna vote a bill out, before crossover, March 14th, what language might you suggest? Or what little to-do list might you suggest would be like, that's okay, we could do this now and we could do X, Y, and Z and have that be due to the legislature next October.
Okay. Yeah, I will work with Secretary Moore and other agencies. That sounds okay to me.
Okay, because we're at a fork in the road with,
Mhm.
what we do with the bill.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Sibelia, yeah.
Okay. So 2 questions. One, so looking at the annual energy report and the thermal energy slide, that is sales tax data, right? Broken down by sales tax data. So it's slide 101. Natural gas, the pie chart, natural gas, propane, oil, but
So I can't pull it up right now. I don't know if there's a site on there. I don't know why
it says 2022 EIA State Energy Data System and Vermont State Tax Department.
Right. So yeah, so it's the combination of that. That's why I was hesitating, is the EIA is kind of the federal agency that collects a lot of that information. So it's a combination of those sources.
So what is the information that they're collecting?
The government is collecting all the information. So it's the state that SEDS, the State Energy Data Survey information. So they do surveys and collect representative sample information of what kind of fuel you use, et cetera.
So this is data about the state kind of as a whole, but would not be data that we would understand by community.
Not on that particular slide, no, yeah. And not any of the state SEDS data is not broken down.
So just in terms of the thermal reporting, I haven't made it all the way through all of them, but is there, well, okay. So in terms of understanding, and I think I just want to ask about in terms of understanding if there are, we talk a lot about affordability, but we talk about it kind of at the big picture level. Does the department, do you think there's value in understanding that at the community level? For our planning? I think you said yes at the beginning, but I want to ask that kind of clearly. Is this an endeavor worth doing?
So I think
understand?
when you say community, I think of that as at least town, because there's a lot of census data and information that I think can be parsed out by town. And so yeah, I think it is useful to understand the differences between our towns and within the state. And it's really understanding the distribution of the benefits and burdens of our policy, right? And to do that, having a little more granular look is really beneficial.
And it's or lack of policy.
Yes,
Policy or lack of policy.
I agree.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just sending a letter to you and Secretary Moore.
Great.
I will probably see you next week.
All right. Yeah.
I need
I should give
you're
TJ one of
good.
the drawers here to.
Actually, PJ doesn't know it, but he's on the mug list. Yes. He's gonna be on the mug list. Yep. The order has been placed.
Wow.
Yeah. What is it? This is your fourth visit?
Yeah.
That's mug.
But who's counting?
Yeah. That's mug worthy.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Should we roll straight into our budget discussion?
John.
Sorry. Yeah. Let's do it. Okay. Great. It is. Oh my God. Can we open the door? It's just me.
No, it's not.
Oh my God.
No, it's not that.
So I guess this is what
Yeah.
this was our trade-off with moving from the closet to the bigger room. We have a hot box.
Because we have a lot of.
So we have a lot of beautiful plants in here.
Yes. Yeah.
Why not?
Give us a little more.
It's gonna happen. A little more oxygen.
So
Yeah.
carbon dioxide. Yeah, carbon sequestration.
Okay, now I had at one point some budget notes. All right, folks, for those joining us on YouTube, we are shifting topics now. And we are going to have a committee discussion on the governor's FY 2026 proposed budget, which is now becoming the legislature's FY 2026 proposed budget. So we have, as everybody knows, we have our letter to approps that we need to get down to their committee by. Could you guys shut the door, please? Thank you. We have a letter that we need to get out to approps by the 26th. So, I'm just looking for, I had a little running list go thought of issues or budget areas that we needed to make sure we commented on. And I really think I lost that. I had my own little memo going. All right. I'm going to take some notes while we discuss. So Get my little budget. Okay, I think there's some things we can just kind of knock off. And I can take notes. So, in the, I'm gonna borrow that. I know that's yours. Alrighty, so we received our assignments from appropriations. And the some of these I think we can move through pretty quickly. Section B 1100 parentheses B. And I'm working through this document that we were using as our guide the other day. So if you guys have that. That is the FY 2026 governor's recommended budget. I'm going to start out, we're going to go in chronological order. So we are page 4B 1100 parentheses B. And that is the Department of Services. Okay, however, we're in section B of the budget, everybody, which are miscellaneous one-time appropriations. Okay, so we're talking within the broader category of miscellaneous one-time appropriations. The first one is Department of Human Resources. FY 2026 funds are appropriated for the following, and it's 1.575 million general fund for the classification modernization project. The explanation is that this is funding to support replacement of the outdated Willis classification system. This system is used in determining position pay grades under the collective bargaining agreements for classified employees. I wonder if there's anyone in the room who could.
There is no technology associated.
Okay, no technology associated with this. Representative Kazetska, do you have any thoughts on that? Is that
We've had some
anything that you guys
awareness,
think?
well, we've had some awareness, communicating with our committee about all kinds of changes. Some would say upgrade things with software kinds of things that may involve funding here. I don't have specific notes here with you today about that, but there's many departments that are getting upgrades in software across all the types of.
Okay, Representative Harris?
Yeah, I just, for context, HR uses a classification system called the Willis system.
Okay,
It may be, I think we may have heard that we're one of two states that still uses this classification system where you plug in different factors and you come up with, yeah, you should be at, this pay grade. It's old, like that's maybe 50 years. And obviously a lot of things have changed. What's happening now is, I'll use myself as an example. Let's just say we're all at a certain pay level classification here. And I think I'm doing more than my John here. So I apply to get my job reclassified. I mean, after all, I do run March Madness competition
right.
and a few other things.
He's
So,
older than me.
and so I plug those in and lo and behold, I get a new classification that's okayed by HR, and then I get a bump in my pay because it's worth more. There's a social aspect of the legislature that I'm involved with. So the system, I think there's widespread agreement that needs upgrading. I don't know on the software end of it of what it does, but without telling too many tales out of school, we have certified law enforcement among different agencies. You have the motor vehicle inspectors, you have fish and game wardens, you have liquor and lottery, and then you have state police. Um, one group got their jobs reclassified, put them above state police. Another group got reclassified, put them above state police. State police, in my mind, are the ones who are literally, on the line each and every day they go out on the highway. Much higher risk factor in my mind, but what do I know? So now we got to reclassify state police because there's probably a morale problem there. And it's a significant line item in their budget this coming year. It needs to be upgraded. I don't know any software. And
Question for the. Yes, Secretary Riley Goose. Sorry, did you have your hand up?
It is a classification model. So it's, when you say system, it's a model of almost like a grading system or a point system for classifying roles based on a point system. So when we say systems, that's what it's referring to. And it's not it's not a product. It's not a software product that's being used. It's more of an evaluation model to be able to decide. HR uses it to decide which level a particular role or series of roles will fall into.
Okay.
Answer to my question, which is why is it called out as an energy and digital infrastructure item to comment on? And how can we spend $1.57 million? But nobody here knows.
Is it AI?
No, it's Commissioner Brush when they say nothing to do with IT. It's a hiring a consultant to develop the new employee classification system model around job classification, salary levels, RFRs, et cetera. The one that's being used today, which is the Willis system, has been in use since '86.
And it doesn't use AI.
So it's not something that's I don't think so. I will check back with Representative Shy, but I'm not sure they need our opinion on this. Yeah.
So just the Willis system is old, it's antiquated, and a lot of it's based on a person's own writing justification why they should be allocated out.
Okay.
So it's not cut and dry as to whether this person is going to be treated the same as this one if they're doing the same job. It's all about how it's written and perceived.
Okay. Let's move on. I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on this. If I start moving too quickly, folks, let me know. Okay. The next one is,
I couldn't find it.
want to make sure we don't run out of time too. So let's see if we can quickly go through. Okay. Now we need to find D101A. Perfect. Great. All right. So we are now in section D, fund transfers. And we are at D101 A1C, which is 4.3 million for the tax computer system modernization fund. DA1F, which is 15 million for the information technology fund. And DA3A, which is 1.5 million from the ed fund to the tax computer system modernization fund.
Can we ask appropriations to allocate money to put page numbers on their budget for next year?
I think that's a really great idea. We need some page numbers. If you can find page section D, it's page 17. Okay, so we have a one-time transfers from the general fund of 4.3 million to the tax computer system modernization fund and 15 million to the Information Technology Fund. Why don't we take them one at a time? Tax Computer System Modernization Fund, 4.3 million. Secretary Riley Hughes, is that you?
So
Ish?
it is for technology, but this is the existing, e-tax system that is in place today. And this is a fund that the tax department manages to be able to pay for the ongoing maintenance and support that goes into this system.
And I think that I saw later in the explanations that this is a statutory transfer.
This is.
Okay, or yeah, or maybe did I see it or did my sound tell me that? So I am thinking that unless folks really feel a need to dive in here, what we're seeing is a transfer that's required by statute.
So just clarifying questions. That's an annual maintenance budget for our computer system.
As I understand it.
Yep,
Right,
right,
so
Sabina?
it's also the cost of those resources too. So if there's, like, we were talking timesheet billing, it's in from.
This is an existing fund at tax that they've been allocating funding to, like a reserve fund in advance to pay for their IT projects.
So say that one more time. I'm taking notes.
It's an existing fund
Mhm.
at tax, like a reserve fund that they've been allocating resources to pay for their IT projects.
By statute, which I think is interesting too. Okay,
Oh. So sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh.
Would we happen to know what the balance in the fund is? Could you find out?
We can find out. Representative Harrison.
I'm on it.
Representative Southworth, do you need to know what the fund balance is before you decide whether you think?
I would like to know before I did make a decision.
Okay, great. Rep. Harrison.
Sorry, Jim.
No, that's.
That's fine. I just want to make sure we don't get to like voting out the memo and we're waiting on bits and pieces.
Clarify the statutory aspect of this.
Yeah,
That means we committed to it in the past as an annual transfer.
yeah, it says, it is an annual, and this is on page 19. It says it's an annual transfer from the general fund to pay its allocated costs per, and I don't know, Rep. Moore, if you've got your pencil going, 32 VSA 3209B. And that's on page 19 of our packet. And I didn't go look up the statute, but that's where you're going to find what it is.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Good. We've come to our big enchilada. Information Technology Fund, $15 million. Thoughts, questions? We have Secretary Riley Hughes and her team here in the room to learn more, see what we need to decide. Representative Sibilia.
Related to our conversation this morning. This is not getting us better aligned with the internal service fund. This is a fund for IT projects. Or it is, this is, okay. So information technology.
So this is the 15 million that we took testimony on earlier today. That's what I understand it to be a partial buy down of the SLA chargebacks that agencies are typically seeing a year later when they get the bill, basically. And so we're trying to launch kind of a two-year or phased-in project to getting caught up with that sort of what we were calling backward spending or deficit spending. So this isn't going to cover the whole anticipated SLA for the upcoming budget year, but it'll take a big bite out of it. Did I get that right?
Yes, yes.
Oh my God. Okay, Representative Southworth.
So that brings me to my question. What time frame would we be looking at? And how much more would we be looking at to make it solid?
We just met with the Joint Fiscal Office just after we testified here. And working with each one of the business offices before they put their budget forwards for FY 27, I don't anticipate that we should be asking for another large chunk. The reason being is that if they were already putting into their budget before, instead of calling it SLA now, we're going to call it core enterprise services. And this is just to balance just those foundational services leading into 26 so that we're not charging them in 27 for them.
And with that, the time frame where we're done with deficit spending would be for this coming budget year or the budget year after?
We're working on that plan with Commissioner of Finance Management right now.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm taking notes, right? Yep. Mhm. I'm sorry. I don't know, because I was looking at my notes. Representative Campbell and then Representative Sebelia.
I was just wondering whether we're still going to be billing agencies and departments in arrears for the bespoke projects. So that will still appear in the BAA or?
No, so the scope is charged and invoiced in fiscal year of consumption. It would be anything remaining in SLA that would qualify for SLA. But we would be reducing a big portion of that. We would also be reducing a portion of what the billing is that is currently charged.
I guess I still don't.
Let me level a little bit.
Yeah.
So the SLA is billed in arrears by 12 months. Where our other demand options, timesheet, telephony, and bespoke are billed usually 30 to 60 days in arrears. So they're in real time of the fiscal year. And so this 15 million looks at those services that fall in the SLA, pulls them into core enterprise services so that we actually have the money when the expenditures occur rather than 12 months in arrears.
So you will stop using SLA as a billing category?
Well, there's some
which is something that I don't understand anyway.
So there's some that will have to remain in SLA, like actual licenses for specific products. The add-on, like you have the Microsoft license, but then you can add enhancements to it. So that will still fall into SLA. And we're looking at ways where we can bring the billing more current, away from that 12-month reflection. But we can't do that in 1 year. That's going to take 2 years to get to that place.
And timesheet is your staff's time
Yeah.
that gets billed to.
Yeah.
And will that always be, there will always be some of that in arrears also?
Yeah, and that's actually the one that probably is the most current. We have agreements with the agencies that we will bill within 30 days. So this, for instance, we have services that were rendered in January. We're issuing billing actually today. So that were rendered in January.
Thank you.
Rep. Sebelia?
So I'm not 100% sure I understood the answer, but I have a question for you. So if we were to say, we would like you to get to a place where you no longer bill in arrears by X year, is there any reason you could not do that? Depending, I mean, based on the year, like, is there a reason we could not do that? So if we said like 2030, could you do it?
Once the new ERP system is live, we'd likely be able to issue quarterly billings for SLA.
So the answer is we could, if we put that into statute by 2030 or 2029, you will not be billing backwards.
So we've always had an aspiration to have more frequent billing in these areas, but because the ERP is what it is, we don't have the tools available to be able to do more current billings.
Okay, sometimes you have to say that a few times in order to get it to the level that it's gonna penetrate. So I think you might have hit it there.
Well, and I'm not sure how you could ever totally eliminate it, right? I mean,
There's no way to totally.
your staff time.
Yeah.
And hey, we bought this license, but they had to add on a module. You're never gonna be able to totally eliminate that.
Well, we could eliminate or greatly reduce risk associated with that by making sure that there are sufficient reserves to cover something like, anticipate some sort of costs, right?
I don't know. And to me, that's a great topic for the work that we're gonna do on IT funding throughout the rest of, unless, if you feel I'm not sure we're gonna be able to put a committee position on overall IT funding and ADS billing practices into the budget letter unless you see a sentence that we don't have to take.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of just,
A lot of testimony
including
on-
kind of like factual information in our budget letter. So, we could put a sentence in that says, we're deficit spending and encourage the appropriations committee to monitor this.
Well, I think that would be useful. Why not?
Yeah.
But I thought you were trying to more like, and we'll tell them to be all done with this by 2030.
Well, I'm just
I don't
wondering
think.
that, I'm kind of asking that. So we can get to our bill. This is maybe not the right place for that, but I have one more question, which is just around the naming of that fund.
Yeah.
Do you have other funds that are specific for, that are used for funding big IT projects?
So we have the
ADS.
Information and Technology Fund, which
Yeah.
is an internal service fund, and we also have expenditures that fall into the Vision Fund, which is the ERP fund.
Yeah.
That supports operations. So those are our two internal service funds that we operate under.
Okay.
But we don't manage.
We don't manage the Vision Fund. That's actually managed by Finance and Management. We
Yeah, I
only
just find the name to be a little bit unfortunate, actually. Right? I mean,
Well,
it's the ADS fund, isn't it? I mean, it's for, why are you laughing? Am I missing it?
No,
Inside
so,
joke.
Am I missing
so that fund was
No.
established in, I think, 2004,
Oh, okay.
before ADS was even
Yeah.
bought anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
it's just, it's confusing. I mean, maybe we
It
should
is.
think about that as a name change in our cleanup bill.
And our cleanup bill.
Outlived the terminology for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks, Madam Chair.
So if we were to include a statement of fact or like to plant a flag in our budget memo about the deficit spending approach and what you're making progress to clean up here with this, but what will always remain or the general, how would,
That we intend to
how would one,
work with ADS on,
how would one word that so that it's accurate?
So
the secretary.
one other thing to consider, we are required on an annual basis to do a reconciliation of our fund. Right now, it's extremely manual. It's not done through our ERP process, our ERP tool. It's done on Excel spreadsheets, and it's a cooperation between our office and Finance and Management. We have some functions, they have other functions. We can only do that reconciliation on an annual basis because it takes 3 months to compile all of that data. It's a lot of work. And so that's part of why I say until we have a more mature ERP that's built in a way that will allow us to do reconciliations on a quarterly basis, we won't be able to give a good projection on the deficit spend periodically through the year. It would be impossible to give you that.
So the thing that I'm worried about is, our committee has an obligation to say to the appropriations committee as they're building the budget or building a response to the governor's budget, the House's budget in response to the governor's budget, things that we're worried about, and I am worried about the fact that there's a very real possibility that we could see some pretty significant cuts in federal funds, which could significantly, which creates some risk here. I don't think we need to be alarmist. I don't think we need to, go on, but I do think we need to. I think we have an obligation to note.
Yeah.
That there's a challenge here that needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
I think that's important, and I think what I would recommend as the next step is, Rep. Sebelia, why don't you draft something? And I'm big on assignments. Why don't you draft something? And if you could work with Secretary Riley, who's in her team, to make sure it's accurate, and then you can bring it to the committee for consideration.
Mission accepted.
Thank you. Great. Okay.
What's the, so just one last, and let those who need to move on. So what I understand the $15 million to be is, if we wanted to put a line, a sentence in the budget memo, it's for, minimizing and ultimately eliminating an annual big deficit. That's that progress. In order to make the reconciliation with internal service funds more current. Is that something like that? Fair to say.
I mean, I think that there is some truth behind that. Yeah.
Some truth behind that.
It's not a complete wipe of the deficit annually, but it is a way for us to reconcile in a more timely manner moving forward.
Okay. So, should I write that down? Or should you get that?
I think I got it.
Okay.
And that will be something that we will probably, that will be something that Representative Campbell will draft. And we'll make sure that that's accurate.
Is everybody getting the message?
No, and I'm not, these are important things. we have assignments.
Agreed.
And I'm not, and your thing's important too.
I'm sorry, manager.
I'm not, that's right, I know you're big on interjections. I'm not undercutting the importance of that, adding that to the letter. I actually think it's really important, but you have to draft it. Okay, section D, A, 3A, a one-time transfer from the education fund to the tax computer system modernization fund of $1.5 million. And this is
Same as C.
the same as C, and it is under the same section of statute, 32 VSA 3209B.
You want me to read this one sentence of that statute?
Yep,
I
that
can
would be
read it
great.
out loud. Fund shall receive annual transfers from the general fund and the education fund in amounts not to exceed 0.21% of total revenue collected in the prior fiscal year by the Department of Taxes.
So it's it's a percentage base. And
Fund may
Barb-
receive other funds receipts as directed or authorized by the General Assembly. So we're allowed to put in more if we want to.
mhm. And I wonder what broader section of, I can go look it up. I'm curious about what broader section of statute that we're even in. What are we even, I'll look it up. We don't need to bog down.
Yeah, and just, sorry,
Yeah,
they are statutory. Doesn't matter what the balance is, they're statutory, so I would be supporting you doing those because they are statutory.
okay. Would you like to know what oh no, we're already finding out what the fund balance is.
Yeah.
Because we're taking money from the general fund and the ed fund.
But they are statutory, so I'm
Okay,
fine with that.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I just got a letter. Given some of the background and some of the current expenditures for that tax modernization fund, and it also refers to the same that Representative Darrell just read, the statute of 1.21. I'm happy to forward the link to this if your committee would like to read it.
yeah, that'd be
It
great.
doesn't give me the balance, but, it does explain some of the projects. Like, for example, they have an ongoing, scanning project to, take all the paper, forms that they get, scanned so that they're electronic, which makes sense. Because not everybody files their taxes electronically, so I'll forward you this. It's just a 2-page memo from the Department of Taxes that was sent to our joint fiscal committee last November.
Great, thank you. If you could forward that, and then we'll share it with the committee and post it on the website. I feel like, yeah,
I do want to support us getting the balance of that. And it's
I
a
think we
set
are getting the
percentage,
balance.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It's a set percentage.
Yeah,
I mean, theoretically impacting property taxes.
and curious to see. So yeah, I think we are getting the balance.
That's been around since 2007, I think.
Okay, what, did
That
you
it?
print out the whole letter? Yeah, is that it? Okay, that's not quite it though.
That quite it? That's all.
That may be it, but it's not it.
Oh,
So,
Got
we need to talk about, okay, so that's digital infrastructure. Before we let folks go, did we have any questions for Secretary Riley Hughes and her team about everything we just talked about? Because I think the next thing we'll probably be doing is like drafting our letter.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody have any strong feelings about the items we talked about? Like I'm not going to support this unless X, Y, and Z, or I'm feeling favorable. I am feeling favorable. So, but don't need to do a strong poll. I'm just saying now is the chance. If you've got a problem with any of this, we should try to find out now so that we can get answers and yeah.
I will support it for the simple reason that if we don't support this to try and get a handle on deficit spending, it's just going to multiply and multiply, and we'll be in a worse situation than we are right now.
Yeah, I see no reason not to support this, provided we get that balance and that we find some truthful language that we can put about the status that we're trying to shift,
I think that's really important context for our letter.
how we're trying to shift things, what is happening now and how we're trying to shift, how you're trying to shift. In language that people can understand.
Which I think is it. So in my mind, we're talking about two things: how we're trying to shift and why ADS is making this request. That's the underlying rationale for the entire appropriation. I thought that you also wanted to add some context. Yeah, that we're doing deficit spending here, and this could become more risky considering the federal context. Okay, that's all right. Great.
I have one.
I would,
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Rep.
go for it.
Kleppner?
no, I would just add that, over the years, it has not been my experience that the governor's team has over budgeted for IT. So I arrived without much concern that there's money again, it shouldn't be.
Fair. Heard. Rep. Torrey?
I'm just thinking about the education transformation work we're doing and what the IT implications could be for that, but I imagine that would hit down the road.
And I
It's
think
not-
that
yeah.
has to do with,
Yeah.
this is not here, I think that has to do with Ways and Means, all the
Right.
work that Ways and Means is doing on the appraisal system and the grand list and stuff,
Okay.
Mm.
So that's coming.
not through us.
So my last question is, in the explanation in the letter from approach, it refers to the $15 million of approximately $15 million of services. And so that leads me to wonder, I thought it was in effect, seed money or something like that. Are there services that make up that $15 million that we could look at that?
we're providing a level of detail to joint fiscal office right now around where that $15 million would be allocated to in that current consumption of spend right now. That aligns to what we've been talking about around core services. And so that those numbers and that detail is going to the team over there.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'll hear about this later from Rep. Harrison. Okay.
Will we hear about this later from Rep. Harrison?
Or I will.
You will.
as-
I see.
as the,
Sorry. Okay. So, we do not need that. Do you want that level of detail for our budget memo, or are you good to go?
Well, when do you think you would have that finished?
So we're providing that information. I haven't seen it yet from my analyst, but within the next 24 hours.
Oh, gee, okay.
And the joint fiscal office said that they were hoping to have a memo out at the end of this week, beginning of next week.
Okay.
So
That seems fine.
it should align to your 26th date that you have to have.
Yes,
this.
okay. So I guess if Rep. Harrison, you just let me know when we get it. Okay. Thanks.
So it's coming to Rep. Harrison, you say?
It's probably coming to the committee.
Yeah, to the committee. Yeah.
We'll send from folks and or someone sent. Okay. Are we all set with our team from ADS? Going once? Okay, thank you very much. I know you rearranged your schedule. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we're not done. Do you guys want to stay? We actually aren't done.
Oh.
Oh.
You have
Well,
specific
but I have a-
for us?
well, I have a question.
Get you back at 3.
Okay, well, my question is, do you guys want to stay? We have nothing to review in our energy portfolio, I believe. Correct?
He has broadband. I have broadband.
Your broadband,
Oh,
Community Broadband Board does not have a request, right?
Well, they have the regular budget.
Yeah, they have their budget. They reported things out relative to the monies that they receive on the federal side.
Okay.
Follow through with broadband construction, kinds of things. And they're a very good place, quite frankly. I can send you what they gave us from information sheet. They have not come before you yet, is that correct?
No, because we knew that they didn't have anything above and
Just for
beyond.
information.
They're not getting appropriation.
I can send it along.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah,
so you'll send us the VCCB report,
I'll send the report. I'll have Aaron send that to the committee.
Great,
And you'll have it for information if nothing else.
that's great.
They've done a good job drawing down what they need to here over time, especially when it comes to all the supplies they need for the construction, large construction pieces that they're doing. And they do have an interactive map here now, so you kind of look to see what's in progress and what's been completed. So you should check that out.
Okay, so we'll look for that memo. So we can put a sentence in just saying that we've reviewed it. Super. Department of Corrections and Wi-Fi, but does anybody want to stay for our committee discussion about the Department of Corrections and Wi-Fi?
It's not my area.
Okay,
And I would be guessing at
Yeah,
the conversation there.
okay,
It's not my area. Correction.
okay.
Potentially get you a committee member that has corrections.
Well, it was a request to the broadband board for a grant to put Wi-Fi throughout the facilities, both for inmate, incarcerated people
Yeah.
and okay,
Right.
and for the staff.
Is this part of the capital bill or?
Well, no, so our understanding, it just kind of came up through our testimony with Department of Corrections. They came in to talk about their IT systems, and it sounded to me as though, if I could summarize, DOC needs $3 million to provide Wi-Fi in its facilities. The buildings are mapped and ready to go. And it sounds to me like when they've come to the legislature has said, oh, there's federal grant money available for that. So go and get your money there. But that, it didn't get funded. So I don't know I don't know why, but it didn't get funded. And now with the rollback of federal funding, unfortunately, the program has the name diversity or equity or something
Underserved.
in it, underserved. So, so Director Hallquist now feels like federal funding for this project is a no-go. And they could only fund half of it anyway, which was for the B, CBB. Yeah, they can only fund the part that would serve staff.
No,
So-
They
incarcerated
can't.
people. It was only for the incarcerated people.
Yeah.
The staff is supported by ADS.
Okay, anyway, they need $3 million. And our question has been, do we want to help them try to get that? If we're gonna give up on federal funding, do we want to try to make a recommendation that somebody fund that? And it could be in the general fund or it could be in the capital bill, I guess. And I thought somebody was gonna go check in with corrections and see where we left it with them. We had some back and forth with Chair Emmons and Troy.
I think you're the liaison.
Oh,
Or who is the liaison?
have I fallen out on my job there?
Perhaps.
I can check it.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Is that
No,
what you're-
it's Representative Mora. With our corrections.
Uh-huh.
The day of delegation.
I know. Before we let you go, do you guys have any background on that would be helpful to us? I mean, I don't know if the committee even feels like we want to recommend it, but it keeps coming up.
I can't speak to this specifics of the app because I haven't actually seen it. When it comes to any state employee accessing a state system, that's part of the network modernization project, including these facilities that corrections officers, because they are state employees who need to be accessing in state systems. There is a managed contract where residents of the correctional facilities have access to tablets and they have access to wireless services that has been outsourced to a third-party organization, whether or not that is determined to be inadequate for what they're trying to accomplish or not. They also have a phone challenge that's going on right now where under statute, they're required to have a 24-hour acceptable attorney line. That the service that they're running right now is a legacy pre-ADS service that cannot meet the needs or service the needs because it wasn't built for what they're using it for. So they definitely have some networking and communication challenges overall. But in order to validate that $3,000 number, I'd like to know, I would need to go back and look at what they're asking us in detail.
The only thing we have is, let's see, we have testimony from Commissioner Demmel, a response from Director Hallquist, and then a letter that Corrections sent last year to the broadband board recommending the grant funding. That's what we've got. We have a little library piling up on this.
I need to go back downstairs.
Thank you for being
Do
here.
you want, our corrections liaison?
Yeah. Sure.
I'm not sure that he's going to be available now
That's
because,
fine.
we have a public hearing.
That's fine. We'll just reach out and we'll find a time to check in. Great,
I'll send you what I have. And
Okay.
that'll come from here.
great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm looking at my notes from when Director Demmel was here. And he mentioned that DOT has many disparate systems that are not managed by ADS. So I'm not sure if is that a legacy situation? Are these systems all going to sort of transfer to ADS ultimately?
Any state system that would be used by state staff is ADS managed in some capacity.
It is
Like I
now.
said, yeah, and so the systems that I was referring to where it's the professional facilities residents, that is not a state
Right.
managed service. But then there's also judiciary has some systems in there as well, because they're running their camera systems for the court. And that's also separate and that's not managed by ADS.
Okay, but in order to access in order for the incarcerated individual to be able to access their tablet, they have to have access to Wi-Fi,
Correct, and
which would be a system presumably that is managed
outside of ABS.
outside of ABS.
Yes. They're
A
not.
separate Wi-Fi system that is not,
100%, yes.
oh, okay, so there's a
Not
Wi-Fi
100%
system,
state network.
okay,
And that's what the 3 million's for.
okay, so that's the issue. Is it, there will be 2 Wi-Fi systems, at least, throughout the
And
facilities,
possibly 3, given that
possibly 3.
judiciary's on their own.
Although that might be a hardwired system.
Can I send you the,
I would love to, yeah.
okay, we have, well, Commissioner Demmel, we always try to request written testimony, but Commissioner Demmel didn't, he wasn't able to provide that. So unfortunately, we have his YouTube. It wasn't a long meeting. You can, as you know, listen at 1.75 speed. We have his YouTube hearing. We have a response from Director Holquist. We have the letter that corrections sent to the broadband board last year. And that's kind of all we got. And so, and we don't know what the corrections committee is thinking right now. I think they're very interested in getting this. I don't know. We need to find out. Rep Mara will find out. So we'll have Rep Mara check in with corrections and find out what they're recommending or whether they are putting this in their budget memo.
If you would be interested after I do meet it, I would be happy to send a memo to you with what the ADS component.
That'd be great.
Your understanding is.
In the facilities.
Okay, I'll send you this email before I forget. Okay, well, that was good. We got a lot done. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And I hope everybody wrote down their assignments. And we will see you later. Thanks so much. We can adjourn.
Part of your day.
Yeah, thank you for. We can adjourn and go.